pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll begin the meeting with a moment of silence. This meeting is being recorded and televised by the local cable company. I'd like a motion to approve bill and payroll warrants.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Like a motion to approve, to accept correspondence in the read file.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Public forum. Now's the time for anyone to speak who wants to talk on something that's not on the agenda. Approval of meeting minutes, open session, June 26, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, before we go into the regular meeting, we're going to have executive session. We need to go into executive session in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Exception 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Yes.
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 And we'll come back in an open session as soon as we finish. To save some people here their time, is to move the recreation director's request to discuss the July 4th event up front too, and Frank will cover that during the town administrator's report.
Thank you. On July 2nd, I received a call regarding, actually from the former U.S. Attorney, Michael Sullivan, expressing concern that his daughter, who was a candidate for the seat he once held, was not being permitted to participate in and attend and speak to people about her candidacy during the 4th of July activity in the park. I did have some concerns about our ability to limit those types of events, and I placed a call to town council and left a message. She returned my call, and we talked about it, and I understood, and I believe she agreed with my belief that speech is protected, that the park is a public place and people can attend these public events. They can wear campaign buttons, they can wear shirts, and they can hand out leaflets. The Recreation Department was concerned about this because it is and always has been a family event. And in the past, the request to not conduct political activities has been respected. Because this came to light and because it appears to be protected speech, the director was advised by me to not prevent any political candidates from attending, wearing their shirts, handing out leaflets, or otherwise engaging people during the event. The result of this discussion is council has issued an opinion. It came in this afternoon, and you all have a copy of it, which essentially says that political speech is protected in public places where we don't have a, what would the word be, cause to restrain that activity. The director has asked to be put on the agenda. I think he has some things he wants to say about that. So
Okay. Come on up,
with
Al.
the board's permission, I'll defer.
Thank you, gentlemen. Regarding this, I was contacted by several political parties, including my own party, regarding the Family Fourth event. Basically, they originally wanted to put big signs up and everything, and I told them that this is a family fun day. We've never had political, it's never been used as a political event. It's never been a political rally. I said, if you guys do come down, you're welcome to come down. But basically, I wanted them to take the Jeff Deal approach, which was basically set up a table with your family, not your whole political entourage, and cut up watermelon, and maybe with a, if it was an election year, I think Jeff Deal did it once or twice, but most of the time, you couldn't tell he was a candidate. He was there at a table with his entire family, handing out watermelons and enjoying the event with the rest of the families. He wasn't handing out leaflets or nothing.
He was just being there.
It was just being there, and that's what we wanted, and that's what I asked. I never banned anybody from coming. I just asked, listen, you're welcome to come down, but let's keep the politics out of it because this is a family fun day. This was my concern if we allowed it, that we're going to start opening up a Pandora's box with big signs and banners were going to come out, as it happened.
And it did happen.
It did happen, and it got out of control quickly.
Okay, I heard it got out of control, but I need to, what's the picture?
The picture was they all came in and we let them set up kind of away from the area, in a shaded area, because it was pretty hot that day. At first, they were trying to encroach into the picnic tables where the families would be, and we had to ask them to move back. They had their tables. Most understood that. The ones that continue to have their big banners, we asked them, hey, if you can just turn it around and have them face the streets, figuring that would be fair, or take the signs down, which they did at first. And then it was within 10 minutes when the bicycle carriage contest ended and the kids were coming down the hill and we were getting ready to start the kickoff of the Family Fun Day. The signs came out, the big banners bigger than station wagons came out, and next thing you know, we had 4 or 5 of this particular group's entourage rushing our area, handing out balloons to the kids, preventing us to kick it off on time, all the events. We had to hold back for 5 or 10 minutes, which is unfortunate because we had to cancel 2 events because of the time delay. Eventually, they moved along and waited and then kept on coming in and out. It just, once they did that, once they pulled up the signs, every candidate started going back to their vehicle and started pulling out the signs and banners. Almost all the residents, as you've probably seen on social media, a lot of the residents were chiming in on it. A lot of the residents were trying to stiff arm them pretty much, hey, this is a family event. One particular group didn't seem to care. They tried to go up to one of my staff and request mic time. My staff informed me, and I told them absolutely not. And I think they tried to do the same with Donnie Westhaven, tried to go up to him, and he said the same thing.
Okay.
So it started getting out of control.
All right.
With the political.
I have a picture now of what
And it was unfortunate.
There. We had one particular political candidate who happens to be
nameless?
the one that makes the call. Permanently affixes 12 signs to the park ground, has a banner, has a table, has an entourage of 12. The issue I have with this is I believe the Recreation Committee had a plan in place to deal with that did not infringe on anyone's liberties, absolutely protected the First Amendment. And
excuse me, though, because this is where I might differ with you. And I've had this conversation with Dan.
I think preserving the integrity of a family event and asking political candidates, and you're not encroaching on them by any means, just saying...
You're telling them what to wear.
We welcome you. No,
you're telling them what to wear, right?
No, I told them, they said they wanted to wear red shirts, and I said I would prefer not. But we never told them not to. And they came in with their red shirts.
Would you
and
have
they came
stopped anyone from wearing a...
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
That's not what I heard. Okay.
Well, I don't think anyone even spoke to him or spoke to anyone from the commission prior to coming out with this decision, and that's why I have the problem with it. I mean, this seems to be an ongoing thing,
There's, what seems to be an ongoing thing?
that decisions are being made without this board.
Well, Frank...
And this board is the elected chief executive officers of this town.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay?
Frank,
Exactly.
after Frank received the phone call, he called me, and you know he did, because I...
Why wasn't a department head contacted?
He was.
When were you contacted?
I was contacted by Frank after he had talked to council, I believe, or after he talked to Mike
Why
Sullivan.
wasn't the department head contacted? What was said to the...
Wait, time out. It was my understanding that after Frank received a phone call, okay, that suggested that, ironically, on the holiday called Independence Day, by which freedom of assembly, as well as freedom of speech, is to be celebrated, people were asked to curtail their speech and to curtail the way they assembled. Let me finish.
Who provided that
You
information?
let me finish. You asked a question, I'm trying to answer it. Frank called me, and he said that had happened. And I said, well, gee, it makes sense to, and then Frank let me know what he did. Okay, what did he do? He made a decision that the park would be open to politicians.
Based on not having the actual information, though. Here's the problem.
he had
Mr. Chairman, I can speak as to what I
You took the
did.
complainant's information,
Okay.
but never actually spoke to a member of your staff.
Frank, would you explain?
I'm not sure where this conversation is going, but I will tell you exactly what happened. And Ollie, please chime in if I get it wrong. I received a call from Mr. Sullivan expressing his concern that the civil rights of his daughter, who is a candidate for office, were potentially being violated, and he hoped he wouldn't have to take it any further. I called Mr. Amato. I asked what the issue was, what was going on.
Okay, so this is the department head, and you're
Yes,
talking to him.
Mr. Amato advised me
So Randy, number one,
When
he spoke.
was this, Ollie?
right after I got the phone call
I
from Mike
believe it was
Sullivan.
Monday. Originally, I had spoke to Lisa Green, and I believe Dan Salvucci was on the other line, or right there in the office, when I told him what my plans were. My plans were, hey, they're welcome to come, but not to bring the banners, not to bring, and not to interfere with how it's running. And I thought we had an understanding there. And then sometime later, that had changed.
I do happen to have the phone records because I wasn't sure whether or not this discussion was going to happen.
So you just happen to have.
I just happened to look them up this afternoon
Fantastic.
because I knew this was on the agenda. And I'm trying not to be sarcastic or responsive. I'm simply saying what I have. I received a call at 6:07 PM
On,
Monday night. When was the holiday? Wednesday?
Wednesday, yeah.
that was July 2nd.
Tuesday night, 6:07 PM,
That's the
the
second,
day before,
July 3rd then.
right?
I
Oh, it was
Monday.
Monday. All right. 6:07 PM, I said to the caller that I would have to get back to him. I called council, left a message, received a call back at 8:29 AM, explained what the situation was as I understood it, and as I understood it, the people were asked not to wear shirts, not to put signs, not to hand out leaflets.
That's what you, that's what
And
you,
not,
were- that's
not,
what, that's what,
basically not to
that's what
campaign.
you were told by
By Ollie.
all.
No. I told them I did not want them having signs up. I did not want them having campaigns. I didn't say anything about wearing shirts.
Okay.
And, well, when you conveyed it to me, you said you didn't want them wearing political shirts.
No, I did not say that. I don't recall saying that whatsoever. I just did not want them up there with the signs. That was my concern, that eventually there would be a full-blown political rally, which it ended up being.
So after speaking to council at 8:29, at 8:33 AM, I called Mr. Amato and explained what the issues were, what the perspective of council was, and what our limitations were on our ability to limit people to speak at the park. I'm not really sure what else.
And Ollie, you
should have
followed
done.
through on it based on the conversation with Frank.
Yes, and then when I informed everybody afterwards, I talked to Dan Salvucci about it afterwards. I talked to Frank and told him, hey, they had a bunch of signs up, and then I kind of got a strange response, like, well, how come we didn't ask them to take them down? Well, I was on the assumption that it was allowed. So
Right,
I'm a little
right.
bit confused.
I would have been, given what Frank had said.
When he
And
told me there
given
were
what
signs in
the
the
attorney had
ground,
said.
I said, I would not have allowed
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, Dan and I had a conversation, I think it was prior to July 4th. And he obviously had given you the impression that, to do it the old way, the way that was done before. With cutting of watermelons, don't be political, just enjoy the family day. And after I talked to Frank, it was I told Danny I disagreed with him.
Doesn't always happen that way, but we disagreed.
Yeah, I disagree with him. I said it's a freedom of speech issue. It's a freedom of assembly issue, and I couldn't see any other way around it. And it made sense. It made sense to me. I didn't. It's unfortunate that apparently some of the people for whom we bent that way, for whom we accepted the First Amendment, that they apparently acted, as you describe it,
In your face,
in
basically.
an unruly way.
It was very much in your face
Yeah.
at that point.
Can I say something?
Yeah,
If I
Dan.
may? Okay. That Monday, when I was in signing warrants in the Selectman's office, Lisa did get a call from Ollie, and she had mentioned that I was there, and she repeated Ollie was asking her questions, and she was repeating it to me, what Ollie was looking for, and I told Lisa, personally, I said it's a family fun day, it's a children's day. I said, we've always had people there handing out watermelon or something like that, because it's a family fun day, but no big political signs. Right, and I would prefer no political signs, that just it's a family fun day. But, right, and that's what Lisa told Ollie, right? She just repeated what I said to her to tell Ollie, and that's what she did, stating that, yeah, they can be there, enjoying the day, handing out, watermelon and stuff like that, but let's not go, with the big political signs, having 5 or 6 people holding big signs, saying vote for him, me, vote for, whatever.
It was more like
'cause
20.
that's not what it's all about, right? Even though it's freedom of speech and all that, I understand that.
And
But
it's
I'm thinking myself,
Independence Day.
you're opening the door for future issues down the line. You never know.
Yeah.
And then, and the answer is it's public land. You're allowed to do that. But is it public? If it's public, fine. Then anybody should be able to do what they want in the park as long as it's legal, right? Anything you can do anything legal in that park if it's a public park,
I think we're setting ourselves up for
right?
issues down the road.
Do you want to chime in, Attorney Michelle?
I'd like to see just a few things,
Yes.
if that's okay.
Yeah, she's going to.
You're going to be
Just a
helpful.
few.
You're going to be helpful.
I don't know how helpful I'm gonna be. So when I was contacted, the issue was very narrow, and that's what I want everybody to know. The issue was, can we prohibit the candidates from being present at the town park during this event? Can we tell them they can't wear campaign shirts or buttons or have leaflets? And my answer to that was a narrow response, that it is a public forum, that you cannot prohibit free speech in a public forum. You can have reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions that are applicable to everybody, regardless of any affiliation with anything. So, as Frank said, my understanding when I spoke with him a couple of times on the morning of, I think it was correct, the Tuesday, and I did apologize that I didn't get back to him the night before, was that we can't tell them they can't come to an event that is held in a public park, open to the public, wearing a shirt that says candidate for what have you, wearing a button, or even, hi, how are you, and the little leaflets. It was never presented to us, and maybe it was a communication issue, any intent to hold a rally, any intent to have balloons, any intent to have tables, megaphones, anything like that. There's a difference between a political rally and just being present in an open forum,
Good point.
a
Yep.
public forum,
Right.
wearing a shirt that says anything on it.
Right.
You know, eat more fish. I don't know, whatever it might be, down with fur, whatever your, that is a there are some you can't say slogans that are going to incite
Right.
violence and those types of things. So, that was how it was presented to us. I was frankly taken quite aback when I heard what occurred as well. One of the things that Frank and I discussed, I believe after the fact, was that, maybe for moving forward, we need to look at those reasonable time, place, and manner regulations that a public community can place on public forums. Maybe there needs to be, and we all learn from events like this, they say hindsight's 20/20, that in the future that, well, yes, a candidate is welcome, just as the Girl Scouts are welcome, just as the Boy Scouts are welcome, but, there are not going to be rallies and megaphones and, those types of things, and identify where the signs are going to be placed and the number of signs, because for safety reasons or legitimate public purposes that we'd have to identify. This thing moved fast. I think, the sentiments, everybody had very high emotions about it and what it should be, and the history of what it has been here, and perhaps to some, the thought that people would want to do this and what has historically been family time is offensive, and so emotions run a little high. But we were just trying to strike that balance. It's unfortunate that this happened. Yes, it is. But that's the task we're faced, is that we have to strike that balance between First Amendment rights, free speech, the right to assembly, and those reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions. The main thing here that made the difference was this is a public park, which is historically, public parks are, go back, democracy, back to our, early days as a country. Those are public forums in their truest sense. If this had been in some other location, private property, or some other limited forum type of location, it would have been a different result. So I hope this perhaps sheds a little more light on how things developed, at least from my perspective. And again, what happened and what we were talking about and what we were saying access should be was not envisioning what happened.
It didn't happen that way. Okay, excellent. Thank you.
And you do all have a very lengthy opinion, because the First Amendment is not simple, but we did try to boil
Right.
it down for those who were interested in having a fuller, more expansive understanding of all the issues.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And it should be noted that there was no expectation or discussion about a rally, about anything other than the casual participation in the park, saying, hi, here's who I am.
Right.
Handing out leaflets, which are all permissible under these circumstances.
But they,
Which
But
from the
different things.
Recreation Committee's original plan was never discouraged. Did you speak to just about every candidate prior to? the
Just
event?
about every single one, yes.
And Ollie, did you tell them you did not want them campaigning in the park?
I told them I did not want political signs. I told them I did not want big banners, and basically said, this is a family fun time. I never told anybody they could not wear their T-shirts, but I did not want them coming out and interfering with the flow of the event, which they did.
the only question I have is why would someone make a call to the town administrator then? Why would,
It's the same
What?
individuals who decided to put up 20 signs and totally disregard how the event was supposed to be.
why would he call? If
Evidently, he wasn't going to be permitted to have the grand display that he wanted.
The specific.
Well, when you talked to him, did you ever talk to him?
Her.
When you talked to her, did you talk to her about plans that she had?
She wanted to come down there with signs and everything, and I said, no, this is not that type of event.
All right.
I said, you can do the Jeff deal, come down there, have a table with your family,
Yeah.
and meet the people,
Okay.
but I didn't want it to be a political event. I did not want it to be a political rally.
Yeah.
It never has been in the past.
I get that.
But since we've just heard from the town council, so basically, you're saying that we do have the right to prohibit signs and big banners at these events, if I'm not mistaken.
I said you have the right to make reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions. Now, that is a term of art. They have to be tied to a legitimate interest that the town has, safety. That an example is that an example is that if you close your town park at dusk for safety reasons, that's a legitimate time, place, and manner restriction on the use of the public park for free speech and other means. If you look at that, if you have a rule about signage in the park, and it is applied to all signs, we can look at that, and that may be a legitimate, limitation or rule. But you have to study them very carefully to make sure that when you set up these rules, you're not infringing unnecessarily upon the free speech rights. So I think that there is a way in the future that we can set up parameters that, again, this is not a rally. If you're going to conduct a campaign rally, there are a whole other host of rules that apply to that, where it can be held, whether you need a permit, those types of things. This is simply yes, you're entitled to be present. Yes,
Right.
You can wear, again, the shirts, the meet and greet, the slogans, even a leaflet situation. But it seems that something got lost in translation somewhere along the lines, and we'll just leave it at that.
I don't think any of us expected a rally to happen.
No, and it sounds like it was a rally.
But it happened.
Right. And you, obviously, you were too busy trying to run a program for your families to be policing a rally. So you can see how something like this might happen.
Yeah, Brian?
I have, I guess, a different perspective. I've been much more political than most people. I've been on the Republican Town Committee here in town since 2001. I've been the chairman of that committee since 2010. Both the Democratic Town Committee and the Republican Town Committee has had a unwritten rule, I guess, gentleman's agreement, if you will, not to pull this kind of stuff. Just because it's legal doesn't make it right. And as the chairman of the Republican Town Committee here, I'm very disappointed because I know what this event is, and I know how hard the Recreation Commission works to put these together. And the Recreation Commission and Ollie have done such great work to build this up. You can't say enough good things about what they do. And to have a family fun day literally ruined because of partisanship and political aspirations, I find it disgusting. And these candidates have to understand a time and a place for everything. And this was not classy. These folks, really all of the candidates, knew what was the right thing to do, and they chose not to do it. Because State Rep Jeff Deal set the bar on this by making it apolitical, going down for many years, giving out watermelon, no campaigning, just making it a family event. And now I think from what I hear from Ollie that there's been a lot of people that were very disappointed at how this has gone on between social media and talking to everybody. And this whole thing threatens the whole existence of this event. And we need to find a way to fix this. And like I said before, just because it's legal doesn't mean it's right. And I think everybody got caught with a wave here that we didn't expect. And I blame the candidates, all of them, both sides of the aisle, and they know better, and they should do better in the future. And we have to fix this with some kind of regulations, because this can't happen again, because we're going to lose people. They're not going to come to these events. They're going to go to another town. And Dan Salvucci and myself go to the Abington concerts every Sunday night, the free concerts they have all summer. And this exact same thing happened over there. They tried to encroach and flood the people that come to just enjoy the music, mind their own business. And those people who run that event, privately funded, not the town, but using town property, told them to leave. And they made them leave. And if you're familiar with Abington, they're at the high school, where the new high school is, and Linowitz Way goes, it's a long driveway. And they were up by where the concert was, and they made them go back down by Route 18 and hold their signs down there, away from the crowd. But everybody who's gonna go to that concert has to go by them. So they weren't losing anything, but they made them go back. And they agreed the first week. Now, this week, that same person that contacted you made another request in Abington. And it was pretty heated from what I understand. I was informed afterwards. But they acquiesced and they said that, come in.
Okay.
So
Well, look,
we need to create our own town rules here.
yeah,
somehow.
I think that the path is pretty clear here, based on the advice of town council and what happened this last time. Ollie, as far as the Recreation Commission coming up with some sort of guidelines next year that are clear for the event.
And any future summer events this year.
Yeah. That makes sense to you?
Yes, we can sit down, I can sit down with the Recreation Commission next time we meet and go over, and then send it to this board, I would assume, and see
Is there a copy of this?
if it's gonna go with the regulations and whatnot. But definitely, I agree, something has to be done. This
Yeah.
can't,
Yeah, and
we're
these
just not
will
gonna be able to do
reviewed
this.
by council.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, say again?
And those will be reviewed by council to ensure that we're complying with our requirements to provide open access.
But I would like to get this done sooner rather than later, so we have many, many events coming up.
It's going to go right till November.
Yes,
You know,
and
so, you know,
we got an
it's
event
happening
coming up
down here.
this weekend, which is a paid event, so I would assume that we can stop them from going in that gate
Where is that?
at Memorial Field, the Extreme Adrenaline Run.
Yeah, charging admission to get through the door.
Yes,
Well, they can buy the ticket, I suppose.
but we don't have to allow the big political signs inside the event.
I would say you probably, you'd have to ask the council, but I would hope
I
not.
think
But
she's expressing.
I will
some concern.
contact the Recreation Commission, we'll try to come up with a formulated plan of how to deal with it, and we'll present it to you.
Good. It's hard to control unruly people.
No, it's just disgusting how it happened. I mean,
Yeah,
it was it could have been a 5-star event, dropped down to a 3.5 star because of this.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Frank, do you have other things you want to talk about
Couple other
in your
things.
report?
We have received a response from Melinda Tarsi relating to the community survey that we talked about at our last meeting. I've distributed that to the board. It gives some interesting statistics and how they're analyzed in the Milbury study, and we should certainly start working on questions that we think we would like to see included in that.
Right. And one of the ways to get those questions is to have that meeting with the group of stakeholders.
Right.
And you and Scott and I were supposed to get together by...
Unfortunately, I was out all last week.
Okay, so we'll need to get a list of possible stakeholders together by our next meeting, Frank, so
Sure.
we can arrange for you and Scott and I to talk on the phone about that. So that we can let her know.
Right.
And then she apparently is really willing to adjust her time to meet with people. It sounds like she's expecting a large group of stakeholders, because she said we could use Bridgewater State if we didn't have enough space here.
Well,
So,
I'd like to think we get that kind of response. I don't
But
think
anyway,
so, but-
well, it's whoever we chose to help start formulating this assessment survey. So
Okay.
if we can have that, you've jumped down to community assessment, but that's basically the only progress. We have a response from her, and we have something else to look at, and we have to get a list of people that we would like to get together to start forming the survey with her help.
We've completed the sale of 1030 Temple. You authorized me at the last meeting to sign the deed. The sale was $170,000. After all costs to the town, I believe we're going to show a positive gain of $46,000.
Can I ask you a question?
About,
About the community assessment?
sure.
Sean Kane, 31 Forest Street. Is the intention of the community assessment to build a strategic plan? I was a little bit confused about the last meeting. Like, is that to gather that information to write a strategic plan? Is that the intention?
I believe it is, yeah. So what we want to do is to find out what the people in this town see as the priorities. It's closely tied to funding.
Sure. But with the
yeah.
intention of writing and publishing a strategic plan.
That could be the end result of it, yeah. Could be.
Okay, and also a capital plan.
Yeah, that
There
would be
is a
part
group
of it.
that's working on a capital plan right now, some development of a capital plan?
Not that I know of. There was a committee that didn't accomplish much last year, from what I can recall.
We have requested information from each of the departments to compile the capital list and anticipated expenditures in an effort to identify what our capital position and needs
Yeah,
are.
that was a, in reading the town report, that was the goal of the finance committee last year, I think, and it was a goal that was totally unmet. So we're basically at ground zero.
Also, in conjunction with the DPW and the commission for the master plan for like the roads, pavement, that kind of stuff, there was going to be like I think they had talked about doing some sort of assessment so they could figure out what needs to be done and over time what should be done, priorities.
I haven't heard anything from the DPW.
Okay.
I guess, if you had to guess, how big do you think the override's going to be this year that we're going to ask?
That's, I don't know.
Well,
That is, you're jumping ahead of the gun, I think, Sean.
Well, I guess my point is, those numbers were discussed not too long ago about what an override would look like at the coming town meeting. And I think it's important that people have in their hands, with enough time to look at and evaluate, what is the capital plan and what is the strategic plan if we're going to ask for a significant sum of money. I don't think it's going to be like $500,000 override. I think it's going to be in the millions. So a significant override is coming. It would be very helpful if we had a plan. And I think it would be helpful if we had some sort of...
And the first step in that, a necessary first step, is to have this town be able to come together on what it considers valuable as a town.
I completely
And that's
agree.
where- and
But
that's
with
where-
the intention of writing and
Yeah.
publishing a strategic plan and a capital plan.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the first part of it.
Okay.
It's the first part of it.
Do you have a rough idea when that's gonna, like, when it will be published so people can review, or?
The plan? No, we don't. I think we're hoping that we get results from a survey by the end of the fall. I think you were here at the last meeting, and I think that was her.
She said the turnaround was pretty quick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but I think we're talking about the fall.
So
And that's step one. That's step one.
you really think that this may not be doable by town meeting to do those two things?
I don't know. I don't know. I know that we're going to have as a permanent part of the agenda, budget review. We're going to bring some big department heads in to discuss what.
I'm trying very hard to support this committee, but I would like to feel some sense of urgency that these things need to be done, and it's part of the due diligence. if we're gonna have this
And you've been very clear on that.
Yeah.
And we're getting about as urgent as we can get.
doesn't feel very urgent to me.
Well, look, that's, you're entitled to your opinion.
Thank you.
You want to finish your report, Frank?
Yes. I would like to note that we have a number of personnel changes coming up. Paula Anderson, our administrative assistant at the DPW, is retiring after 20-plus years. And they have already hired a replacement who's in training right now. Karen Huxham, our AA in the building department, is leaving in mid-August. We have an ad in place for candidates to replace Karen. Aaron Richardson, who is the sewer and water superintendent, is retiring next month, and at this point I don't know what the DPW is doing. And our library director will be leaving the end of this week, I believe, to go to Canton. So we're seeing changes, and some of us are aging out.
Okay. Anything you, next thing on the agenda is, does anyone have any questions of Frank? Okay, thank you, Frank. The next thing on the agenda is budget review. We have no progress as far as budget review is concerned, except...
No, we don't. We're still trying to close this year, and the final warrants will be run Thursday for the June 30th close. We will be reviewing the appropriations not expended to determine what appropriations have commitments attached to them, and then identifying the rest of the appropriations as to be washed into free cash. I did a preliminary budget estimate in terms of revenue about a month ago, assuming that the Commonwealth sets a budget that doesn't change our assumptions on funding, we can move forward with that. We have budgeted for FY19. The big challenge now is identifying how we get to FY20. I will be having meetings with department heads, and I believe we'll be bringing them into the Selectmen's Forum to explain what their operations are and what they anticipate.
Scott Lambiase couldn't be here this evening because he had to do a meeting in Duxbury, but he did send me an email, and he had some thoughts about budget review. He thought it would be a good idea to have a joint meeting with the FinCom at least one more time so that we're on the same page as far as a budget, an urgent budget schedule is concerned. And so I'm suggesting that maybe we invite them to the first meeting in August to make sure that we're all starting off on the same foot. You know, it struck me before, and I mentioned it last week, that we don't want to be duplicating what the Finance Committee does. They bring department heads in. Although in the past, what has happened is when they bring as I understand it, when they bring department heads in each year, the department heads come up with a kind of what they'd like to do, and then it's eventually pared down. We're going to ask department heads to come to speak to us and to give us some kind of idea what they would do if they were level funded next year, or if they had to cut their budget by a certain percentage. And eventually the size of a possible override will, or another way of dealing with that, with a shortage of funds, will arise from those discussions. So if that's okay, we'd like to invite them to a joint meeting so that we're on the same page before things happen. Community assessment we've talked about. We'll be talking about it again at the next meeting, and hopefully we'll be able to establish who are the people that would be meeting with Dr. Tarsi from.
I do have a question.
Yep.
I've been thinking about this for a while now. Under these circumstances, I know that we're leading into, over the years, we've been pretty successful at juggling these budgets and monies to be one of the, up until now, one of the most fiscally sound towns on the South Shore. And these times now are changing. We can't do business the way we've always done it. And as far as this planning a new budget, I know that everybody has their budgets the way they are and the wish lists that they want to incorporate. Why can't we make everybody start with a zero budget and rebuild the budget from scratch? Why can't we do that? I don't know the answer. I'm really, because if we start...
We can, typically, when budgets are prepared, particularly salaries, which represent a large part of the budget, your zero base is whatever the contract calls for this year.
Right, yeah. Contract aside.
There's no, we're not building on last year's budget. And as far as expenses go, they're very, other than public safety, the expense lines have not grown significantly, or in many cases have not grown at all over the last several years.
Yes, I think we need
And
to...
I think if you want to start with zero-based budget, to me, what it means is you assess your operation, you figure out what it's going to cost you to run your department this year. And we typically do that. The Finance Committee, in reviewing the budgets, typically looks at what last year was and how it compares to what you're asking for the coming year. And they assess a percentage on it in some cases.
For me, it's, people, even in their own budgets, just because they've always done it this way, doesn't mean you have to continue to do things this way. You might have to look at ways to do business differently. And, it might be some very uncomfortable discussions.
Well, I'm sure there will be. There are a limited number of ways to approach reducing your budget. We can't shut the lights off.
Right.
We can't not clean the buildings. So we have basic functions that have to continue. Can we do them more affordably? Well, we have in many cases. We have with the other buildings where we went to a service to maintain those buildings. Frankly, I looked at the town hall as one of those options, but there's so much going on here that it would be very difficult to go out to a service. You need somebody on site. So then you start looking at subscription services. What do we need versus what do we have? And that analysis has to be done at every level of the budget for each department. I think that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. And I think
Bringing people in and identifying, do we need?
Right.
We spend a lot of money on technology. How much do we need?
Right.
We spend a lot of money on service supplies. What do we need?
Right, and I think this survey, while timing may not be particularly great, I think that knowing what the community thinks is important to them, and then we can tailor our services as such.
The town budget went up under 4% last year, but our education costs across the board went up 11.5%. Things we have to look at.
For me, we've been here a long time. We've been through many things. We've been very successful over the years at making Whitman a very financially sound place. And the way the economy is, the way things have changed, I think we need to look at it from another angle and maybe change the way we do things, and maybe it means less services.
And a lot of
It all
those
depends on what they
decisions
like.
are going to come from the 5 people that sit up here.
Yep.
Thanks, Brian. Liaison reports is on the agenda because once we start liaisoning again, and I'll have the I'll have the liaison assignments later on. I'd like to use this as an opportunity on the agenda to have people give reports. We know that Dan goes to South Shore VOTEC. It would be good every once in a while to get be an opportunity at this point for Dan to report on what's going on at South Shore VOTEC, what's going on at Whitman Hanson Regional High School. You know, they have meetings twice a month. Our liaison should be at those meetings and report back what's going on there. So we have a connection with that. If there's anything have to do with the police or fire that we as selectmen want to talk about as our liaisons, we could do that. And that's what that item on the agenda will refer to as we go forward.
Well, I can give you a little one right now. I don't even know if I'm the liaison to the ACO, but I'll just add that I really don't, because it's changed around. It's now with the Board of Health, so.
Animal control.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry.
But at our last meeting, my final round the board was about fireworks.
Yeah.
About dogs.
Right.
And veterans. And right after that, as we get into the 4th of July holiday, 5 dogs went missing this week in Whitman. 5 dogs. One of them on my street. Not mine, but all because of fireworks. So it does happen. And the ACO, the 2 that are working in that department did fantastic work. And there's a big dog in Rockland that went missing, a Bernese Mountain Dog, and they still have not found that dog. So it does happen, and that's why I kind of like to bring those things up.
Okay, well, thank you. And you're not going to be assigned to the Animal Control Office, but that's fine. You said what you had to say today. Okay. Next item on the agenda, policies and procedures. We have travel and expense policy. We were going to act on that tonight. Scott did have an opinion about the travel policy that I wanted to share with you. And I'll read what he had to say. While I do believe, Scott Lambiase, while I do believe that the proposed policy is well thought out and fairly comprehensive, I also feel it's a bit more than we need. I prefer the simpler approach. The department heads are responsible adults. If we give them the guidelines and they go outside the guidelines, the accountant would simply kick back the reimbursement request. I don't see a need to require prior approval from the board or town administrator for travel. If the department head has an issue with reimbursement that's in the opinion of the accountant outside of the guidelines, then the department head can plead its case with Frank and ultimately the board. I think part of the new policy was to have prior approval.
For out-of-state trips, yes.
Yeah, so he's suggesting that maybe we don't need to do that unless it's flagged.
If we're not going to do that, then we should set some financial guidelines in the policy. Because if you don't have any guidelines...
There were some set, weren't there?
Well, no, there's no... There are guidelines in terms of how much to spend when you're in a hotel, what your meal costs are, but you also have to determine where are the events occurring, how much is it going to cost to get there, how long is the event, is it a 7-day trip, is it a 3-day trip? Those are all things that the board should have an opinion on.
Ahead of time, you believe? Okay. But if...
Isn't the whole point of having a policy to eliminate
extravagance?
I mean, if there's a budget line for professional development in a particular department, these are the department heads. We're trusting them with a lot more than travel expenses. That they have their money. We set a policy that has strict guidelines. If they don't adhere to it, it gets kicked back. Last line in the policy should be, if you don't follow the guidelines of the policy, you will not be reimbursed.
But that's my whole point. We don't have segregated funds. We don't say, here's how much money you have available to you for professional development and travel expense. We don't have that in any budget.
Well, then perhaps the travel and expense reimbursement policy isn't sufficiently specific right now then. I mean, we can't expect people to use their judgment if we don't give them guidelines under
yeah.
which to use it. So maybe we got to kick it, maybe there has to be some more work done on it.
One thing that
In other words, I basically agreed with Scott that if a reimbursement request is out of line and gets
Then we
kicked
should
back,
come up with,
then we ought to give
numbers.
them some guidance as to what is
Yeah.
in line and what's out of line. So maybe that's,
I mean, we just had discussion about this board trying to take better control of our finances and to be more proactive. And then the next agenda item is to be less proactive. So I think that, what's it hurt to ask? I mean, they do it in all the lines of government. I don't-
many towns have specific appropriations or designations for how much can be spent in a particular area. And regardless of the amount, you still have to use practicality in spending that money. But we have never identified what is an appropriate amount of money, so maybe that's,
well, there is some new stuff in this. Maybe it just needs to be tweaked a little bit.
Yeah.
There is some new stuff here that says, select moderately priced hotels, blah, blah, blah. But maybe, let's look at those sections again. Airfare, economy, coach fare only, meals. There is a meal expense policy. I mean, we have that already. You get reimbursed for X number of
We
years
have
of per
car
diem
rental,
rate.
airfare,
Yeah.
airfare, meals, personal vehicle. I mean, the only thing we could probably lock down even further is an actual meal per diem.
well, I think there has to be an upper limit. I mean,
Yeah.
is it 5,000? Is it 10,000? How much are we expecting would be a reasonable amount of money to handle these things?
So this needs some more work. I think no matter which way, if we ask the people to come to us for permission first before they do it, then we have to give them guidance as to what we're looking for.
Right.
What the limits are.
And
If those limits are out there already,
then there's
then what
no-
Scott says makes sense.
Yeah,
Let them, they're big people, let them do it. And if the accountant becomes kind of
right.
the writer. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to know, I mean, if they come before us, to find out if the conferences actually benefit the town. I mean, what's the reason for going to the conferences? Does
Well, I
it
think you're
benefit the town?
going to find that most of the conference travel involves professional development, information, networking,
Right.
and sharing and developing better ways to do their job. It's not a junket.
Yeah, but
The other thing that we have to look at, I'm sorry, the other thing,
is that a state? I just, I mean, some.
Many of
towns
them are out of state.
That's-
the other thing that we have to look at is, there are times when money is tight, when there are moratoria on out-of-state travel. No out-of-state travel this year, folks, I'm sorry.
I mean,
True.
if we're talking about an override, I mean, you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. And so I'm uncomfortable with that.
So that's another thing to think about. See if we can tighten this up a little bit as far as
I mean, I think
our
could
expectations.
be a great line in that selectmen reserve the right to prohibit out-of-state travel due to budget concerns.
And actually, that doesn't even have to be in the, we do have the right to do that.
Right.
It doesn't have to be in the policy. I mean, we could decide, and maybe we want to think about this for, over the next few weeks. we might want to, there's some things that we might want to consider that we haven't considered before, that are a little outside of that box. And one is a moratorium on out-of-state travel until we get a better handle on how much we're going to be under for next year. I noticed the fire chief here. One thing that's been rattling around in my head is having our own ambulance service cost-effective? I think I need some kind. One of the things that I would have asked when it's time for him to come in, one of the things I'd like to ask him is to give me a readout of what it costs us to have our own ambulance service as opposed to outsourcing ambulance service. Most of the, as you've said before, most of our business in the fire department is not fires. Most of our business is doing things like dealing with the health and welfare of the people in the town, and our ambulance service does an unbelievable job at that. However, if we are really stuck, is there an amount of money that we save by contracting out ambulance service? I'm not suggesting that we, Chief, don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting that we do that.
You have to update.
No, I know, I don't want to give you, I don't, because I don't want to have to call Brewster to come here and pull you out. But at least not yet. But I think what I'm going to need as we go through this year is an assessment.
Oh, you need a justification.
What?
You need a justification.
Yeah.
Is what you're looking for.
Yeah, and also, like, how much, if we did choose to have another ambulance service, what are the consequences of that? There are going to be financial consequences. We might save a lot of money. Or there might be human consequences. We can't guarantee when people are going to get served. So,
Just off the hip, and I don't want to belabor this topic, but I can tell you that the fire versus EMS responses in this town have almost matched themselves. Fire responses have been climbing over the years, and we used to be 80% like EMS, or like close to. Now we're somewhere in the area of 68% or 64% of EMS work, and the rest is fire work.
Yeah, it's a kind of writing we need to look at.
And like so.
And Randy, and other things that are outside of the box. Randy has had on his mind whether or not we should continue to fund the police station out of the funds that we fund the police station out of within the levy limit. I mean, that's another thing that we need to talk about. We need to talk about as a group.
If I can help you on your travel deal, I can forward to the board the International Association of Fire Chiefs yearly conference. It's some years it's in Texas, some years it's in Chicago, and the Fire Chiefs Association of Massachusetts holds our own professional development conference in February in Worcester. It's a 3-day conference. Yeah. It's just under $1,000, and I send a bunch of my line officers also. The international conference, like I said, is out in Texas or in Chicago. I don't go because it's in August in Texas. I have no interest in that heat. But
I've been in Texas in August, and you're right. Don't go.
Yeah. When I was in Colorado, I went, and it's a phenomenal take because, to your point, Dan, the speakers that they have at those conferences are the 5-star gold speakers. Our conference in Worcester, it's good. We get a lot of knowledge, but we have to maintain so many credits and points to maintain our credentialing stuff as like chief officers. So
I think professional development exercises, conferences, national or statewide, I'm one of the people that thinks they're good things.
It is.
You don't have to talk to me for a long time to say it's good for the town, for the chief to go here or for somebody else to go there.
I attend a 6-day class down the National Fire Academy in Maryland, and you come back with a total different outlook on life because you're talking to people from all over the country.
But if times are really tough, there are times when you have to bite a bullet on that. But it's not because it doesn't do good for the town. It does. The town will lose something if its people can't go on professional development exercises.
And I think you'll be surprised when you start to listen to the budget conversations and the budget talks about where we are. If you remember several years back, Bill Capozzi sat in this room and he told us, Frank, I want to say it was 2010 maybe, or 2011, that we've cut over $2 million out of the town budget. And because of the 2006 or 7 downfall, I forget which year, that things like really started to hit the skids. Our local aid and our reductions have been cut by over $2 million. And we live with that. And we did what we could to get through that. And if you look at the fire department line, you know, we had contractual like increases and we've had expense increases. But if you look at my expense line, it's nowhere close to where it should be. And it works for us, but it's a fluent line because if I have a vehicle breakdown, that could wipe out my expense line by August. And that's what we're up against. You know, to me, the fire department expense line, if I need to replace a floor or paint walls or whatever, I shouldn't have to go to a special town meeting or annual town meeting, ask for $6,000 to repaint the inside of the fire station. I should be able to do that like general maintenance and upkeep.
Right.
I can't do that in my expense line.
Okay.
So that's, I think you may be a bit surprised like
I
you see
didn't
the
mean to set
budgets.
you off with my idea. It was just the kind of thing that we have to be thinking about.
So,
But thanks, Ben.
You're painting, say you wanted to paint the conference room.
yeah.
I would think that that would be something that you would budget for. Instead of saying, you know, I'm planning on doing this, I want to paint it, it's going to cost me $1,000 for the paint and the manpower, we'll say, if you guys do it. And budget for it.
Guys
And
can't do
not
it. You have
take
to
it
hire
out
a
of your
painter.
expense line.
And you would have to do an article
Right.
and fund it that way.
Right.
But that's what I'm saying is that one thing that we've looked at in this town for years upon years is our infrastructure and maintaining that like infrastructure.
And in a way, this kind of plays on actually establishing that capital plan that's talked about.
That the Finance Committee didn't establish last year. That one? You mean that one? When it wasn't urgent, apparently?
Well, I think a lot of people haven't established it, but I think that it's something that,
No, it was just their goal. It was in the town report, it was their goal.
It doesn't help that Massachusetts is the only state in the union that doesn't have a budget. Every 49 other states have their budget completed, and we're on a supplemental for 1 month. They can't figure it out.
I was chastised for making political comments at these meetings once, so I'm not going to say whatever.
No, that wasn't political. I think everybody up there stinks.
I'm wearing a red hat.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into the, I'm not going to get involved on that. This is a non-political
Amen.
committee.
What can I say?
Okay, so we're going to keep the travel and expense policy on the agenda for a while until we think about it some more. Ready for new business? Take action to renew the fortune teller's license for Stars Tarot Cards, Amanda Cole, on the premises located at 418 Bedford Street.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Did she complete, has she applied? She hasn't? So let's pass it over. Okay. Is everybody okay with that?
Okay, bud?
Act on the request of Whitman Youth Soccer President Michael Newcomb to hold the opening day parade through the center of town on Saturday, September 8th, 2018, beginning at 8:30 a.m.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Hey, does he put in a rain date? Or is it rain or shine? Rain, you know.
Oh, the soccer people play in the rain.
Okay.
I don't know. All I have here is that she's opening. All those in favor?
Aye.
Act on the request of COA Director Barbara Garvey for a line item transfer in the amount of $234.96 from line item 212 bus drivers to line item 215 additional clerical.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Act on the request of Town Administrator Frank Lineham for a line item transfer in the amount of $144.51 from line item number 93 custodial extra to line item 97 maintenance technician.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Act on the request of Town Administrator Frank Lineham for a line item transfer in the amount of $762.59 from line item 93, custodial extra, to line item number 7, administrative assistant.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Act on the request of Library Director Andrea Rounds for a line item transfer in the amount of $44.82 from line item 227, Youth Services Librarian, to line item 229, Library Technicians.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Act
Mr.
on-
Chairman?
Yes,
Before you go to the next one,
yes.
I am loath to bring this to you. However, our Assistant Town Accountant
Yes.
walked this line item transfer request in
Okay.
during the meeting. It appears that the Finance Committee is short $40.15 to pay an expense bill, and is requesting that $40.15 be transferred from line 22 clerical to line 23 expense.
Need a motion?
Sure, we need a motion.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, we're not going to get crazy about not having it on the agenda.
Sorry, Mark.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Fear and loathing. Huh? Act on the recommendation of Deputy Chief Hanlon to appoint Tatiana Sanders to the position of matron for a one-year term through June 30th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Act on the recommendation of Chief Benton to appoint Wayne T. Carroll Jr. to the position of Auxiliary Special Police Officer for a one-year term through June 30th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Act on the recommendation of Chief Benton to appoint Rebecca L. Anktill to the position of Auxiliary Special Police Officer for a one-year term through June 30th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Act on the recommendation of Chief Benton to appoint Safaraz Mushtaq to the position of Auxiliary Special Police Officer for a one-year term through June 30th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Discuss the patio at McGuigan's receiving a Keno license. Frank?
This is one of those questions where the state default position is to approve a Keno license unless the community has an objection to it. So if the board chooses to take no action, then the license will be granted.
So we don't need a motion to take no action? Do we need a motion to take no action?
You can vote to take no action, or you can just
Skip
say
it.
you've been
I'll pass
informed.
over.
We just let it ride.
Yep.
Let it ride.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why wouldn't we?
Okay. Recreation Director discussion, RE July 4th event, I think we did that. Act on the request of Chief Benton to transfer permanent intermittent officer Patrick M. O'Brien to the East Bridgewater Police Department. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is
Second.
there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Old business, Chief Procurement Officer. Well, we found out at the last meeting, and since the last meeting, Frank has sent us written clarification, that the Chief Procurement Officer title goes to the position of the person doing the job, not to the person. And this board in 2013, I think I recall, October 2013, voted unanimously to give it to the Assistant Town Administrator, to give that title to the Assistant Town Administrator. And the Assistant Town Administrator at that time and Lisa now is performing that function. Scott had a note too to me, that he wanted me to, I think, carry to you guys while we're talking about this. We had tabled it at the last meeting. He hopes that we will reconsider what we had done in the past. He doesn't feel that we got it right. He thinks we should designate the town administrator as the CPO, and then Frank can delegate the duties to the assistant town administrator, or however many he wants to, or however he wants to do it. My feeling is that she's doing the work. She has the title. I don't see our need to do anything after finding that information. However, I'd like to honor Scott's request to consider it, And so what I would like to ask for is a motion to designate the town administrator as CPO, and have it be seconded, and then have us vote on it. And if things go the way I would like them to go, we will vote not to, which by default means that Lisa can continue doing what she does. But I'd like to get rid of the issue, if we could. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
It's not, it's,
Well, I think it's a correction.
we don't need a motion to make her the chief
Right.
procurement officer, because she is that.
And from what I believe Scott said, he feels the Inspector General has a particular way that he wants to see this done, which we're not following. I looked at MMA, Mass Municipal Best Practices, and they also run the same way that what Scott's saying, the Inspector General says that should be the town administrator should be the MCPO, and he delegates CPO powers to Lisa. I have zero problem with Lisa being it, but
But that's not what,
do
that's not what,
we correct it?
yeah, okay. That's not the information we got from the Inspector General when we wrote to him, right?
Well, this is the way the board member feels that,
Yeah, okay.
how he is
Yeah.
determining it. I have not,
Okay, so anyway, the way to clear it up, is to hold a vote. And I think the only vote that makes sense is to,
I think it's just a paperwork issue. She's going to end up delegated by the actual chief procurement officer, which by best practices should be this board.
yeah, I hear what you're
Or
saying.
its delegate.
But, I don't know, there's something a little funny about that. It's like saying, I don't know. It's like saying, okay, Frank, you can delegate it to this person over here, and she can do all the work and not have the title. She can have all the work and and not have a title.
Well, she would have a title. She would be the CPO, not the MCPO.
No, it's the CPO.
It's the CPO.
And she would be the MCPO then, right? Correct?
Right.
Yes.
Should be the MCPO.
MCPPO, that's a qualification,
That she has.
yes.
Yes. She would procure things
Yeah.
at some point.
She's like she cures them now. Yeah.
Yes.
Lisa, would you like to chime in on this?
Yes, members of the board, Chairman. Just to clarify the differences, the CPO is the Chief Procurement Officer. A town needs to have a CPO, Chief Procurement Officer, in order to conduct requests for qualification type of procurement. An MCPPO basically states that that person has completed the state MCPPO program, which means you are a municipal certified procurement officer. You've completed 3 courses, you've completed the exams, you've received a passing score, and the state has provided you a certificate saying you have passed.
And you
each
have done
test.
that?
I have done that. I've completed all 3 programs, successfully passed all 3 programs. It's just a matter of updating the state with who is your CPO.
So
and
whether
then
you-
also
yeah.
the state will designate the MCPPO to be together with that CPO position so that we can merely conduct requests for qualifications type of procurement.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay.
Mr.
And Frank, and you don't have the MCPCCO, do you?
No, as I mentioned earlier, I had taken the first 3, but contracting under Chapter 149 is a requirement.
And that was the state of affairs back when we made Greg Enos,
Right, because
because you weren't
I
qualified.
was
to do
unable to
Right.
attend due to a death in the family,
Right.
and then the next 2 courses
Yeah.
were oversubscribed, and I couldn't get that qualification.
And you
So
still-
while I do have qualifications for some procurements,
Yeah.
I do not have the necessary qualification to conduct an RFQ.
Okay. And Lisa does.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I just think that if it's not broke, don't break it.
Mhm.
Seems to be going good the way it is. I would like to keep it that way.
Okay, and I think the way of cleaning this off the board is to have a motion to make Frank the CPO and actually vote it down.
I'll make that motion that Frank be the guy
We could vote him in, but
and go from there.
is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? Okay. Abstains? Okay. Okay, so that's,
And that's-
get rid of that for a while, I think, I hope. But I did want to bring it, I did want to bring it for you because Scott asked that it be done. We also need to act on the Whitman Regional School District amended agreement. We've seen it before.
Motion to table till we have a full board to speak on it.
Sure. Is there a time frame by which they need it?
Has to be done before the next town meeting.
Oh. Yeah, well, we can table. Well, is there a second to table?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of tabling it until we have a full board?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Okay, I think we just exhausted the agenda, and the chair. Is there a need to go around the board? Anyone have anything to say? Okay.
Let us say a word.
Okay, motion to adjourn is in order.
Maybe I won't. Motion.
Okay,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.